As President Obama's immigration policies remain tied up in the courts, tonight in San Diego, the focus of immigration shifts to the human side. The University of San Diego's Transborder Institute kicks off its 9th annual Border Film Week with films like this.
No veía crecer a sus hijos, más mis niños crecen nada más sin conocer a su papá, pero ya cuando él venía pues ya estaba más grande.
The featured films focus on migration, violence, and human rights. Chantal Flores, producer of the film La Tierra de los Adioses, The Land of Goodbyes, and Ev Mead, director of USD Transborder Institute. Welcome to Evening Edition.
Thank you.
Now, Chantal, the clip we just saw from your film, The Land of Goodbyes, screens tonight at the festival. You offer this sort of overlooked perspective on immigration. What is your film about?
Well, we focus on Zapotitlan Palmas, which is a small rural community in southern Mexico in Oaxaca, who suffers a high rate of immigration. 80% of the men have left. So we tell the story about these 4 kids growing up in a town where the parents are not there.
Yeah, so 80%, you said, of the men have left this small town. What effect is that having on the town and on these children?
Well, there are so many effects, right? Like, for instance, the women are working by themselves. They are doing the jobs, the agricultural tasks that the men were supposed to do. Also, they are raising their kids by themselves. So we have a lot of issues happening because the men left, or they are just sending American dollars, right?
The migration, right?
Yeah.
Right. How does this type of migration we see in this film actually? Do we see it stemming from other parts of Mexico and Central America, or is it unique maybe to small towns like this?
There are a lot of towns in Mexico, though, that have this kind of tradition. And some of these places are places that have sent people to the United States almost as a rite of passage for 100 years. So they're different than places like, for example, some of the kids we saw from Central America last summer who are coming because there's an immediate crisis. These are long-term structural migrations that have to do with the relationship between the two countries.
President Obama's immigration policies, like the expansion of DACA and DAPA, are temporarily on hold, of course, because of these court rulings. In the meantime, there's this Republican argument that expanding immigration policies like DACA or DAPA is actually increasing immigration into the U.S. What does your research say about that?
We just haven't seen any evidence of that. And despite the spectacle of the Central American kids last summer, overall undocumented immigration has fallen to levels we haven't seen since the late 1960s. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. There are other policies, like our trade policy and our broader relationship with Mexico, that produced a whole lot of migration, and we've never really dealt with the consequences of that, thought about exactly why it is that they're in a town like Zapotitlan, there's such pressure for people to leave, and people can't make a living in their hometown. We haven't thought about the way that NAFTA and our broader relationship with Mexico feeds that. And that's something that's missing from the immigration debate.
Let's get back to your film, The Land of Goodbyes, and this is something that I think sometimes people don't think about what's happening back home. What do you want viewers to get? What do you want them to walk away with after watching your film?
I guess Stephanie and I, the director, we wanted to show people the emotional impact of immigration, and also what is happening in Mexico. You know, we're having a crisis in the family situation. So also the Mexican government needs to start paying attention to what is happening inside our country, not always blaming the U.S. You know, this is like a two-side conflict.
I see. Ev, if you could briefly tell us about some of the other films actually at Border Film Week. Is there a theme that particularly ties all of these films together?
You know, I think the theme is the complexity of Mexico right now. On the one hand, there are huge crises that we all talk about with the drug war, with migration, with corruption. But on the other hand, there's an enormous amount of creative work coming out of Mexico. And there are great human stories like the story in our film tonight, or the story of crime scene investigators and journalists on the streets at night, and our film tomorrow night. Or in our film on Thursday, Reportero, which is about reporters in Tijuana, where we'll feature a couple of local Tijuana reporters who are in the film. They're going to come and talk with us after the film. It gets at that. It's that creative side of this, as well as just the heaviness of the crisis. It's the promise of the border, as well as the problems that we're all really familiar with.
And from what I've seen, this sort of intimate look on both sides. Well, Chantal Flores and Ev Mead, thank you so much. And I want to let folks know that Border Film Week starts tonight, February 24th, and runs through the 26th at the Joan Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice Theater. Films are free and they start at 6 p.m.